Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our event today with the LJC. For those of you who don't know, my name is Abby. I work with Barry Cranford, who's the founder of the LJC, and I have the privilege of hosting today's event. For those of you who don't know, the London Java community is just one of the communities that is run by RecWorks. We are a tech recruitment company with a massive difference. As a company, we believe that recruitment can really be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. From our perspective, if people want to learn and others want to teach, we are happy to connect you through our communities and events like this one. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. To date, we have run over 700 events for engineers and developers, students, graduates, CTOs, all sorts of different people from different walks of life. We have run conferences, lightning talks, hackathons, and again, all sorts of different events too. In January, we made our 4,000th introduction through our Meet a Mentor program. We're really excited about that, and we're looking forward to seeing where that goes next too. As I've already said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you'd like to know more about any of our communities, please do get in touch with me, and we can go from there. Just to let you know, the recording of today's session will be available on YouTube. You can search for RecWorks and you'll find our channel, or I will put my LinkedIn profile in the chat. If you want the video sent to you, just connect with me. I'll be able to send it over to you directly. I'm now going to hand over to Sam, who's going to speak to us about how UX and engineers can create a collaborative user research plan. There will be time for Q&A at the end of her talk, so if you do think of any questions, just make a note of them, and then there'll be time at the end for you to ask anything that hasn't been answered or that you want more info about. Okay, over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Abby. Hi everybody, my name's Sam Burden and I am a UX product manager at Maru. I will just share my screen in terms of the slide deck. There we go. There we are. So yeah, I'm here today to talk about how UX and engineers can create a collaborative user research plan. So the contents of the talk would be an introduction to myself and journey into UX, an introduction to user research and planning, key issues of user research in silos, benefits of using user research in development cycles, techniques for creating collaborative user research, and summary and key takeaways from the talk. As Abby said, I'll leave 5 to 10 minutes for a Q&A session at the end of the talk. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of starting point in terms of introduction to myself and journey into UX. So I retrained from marketing to UX during the COVID-19 pandemic. This was down to I wanted a more technical based role and wanted to focus on design skills I achieved from marketing into creating better product experiences for users going forward. It took me around 9 months to retrain and achieve my first role as a UX product manager, which achieved in April last year, which is nearly gone a year, which is really quick. So within this role, I was the first person to be responsible for creating user research plans within the organisation and responsible for looking at understanding how we can make a user-first approach when looking at product plans and development cycles going forward. It's also the first time I've actually worked with engineers, so it's kind of a bigger experience for me going forward in terms of not just working in one team, but working in a cross-functional team in order to develop products. However, the team I suppose the organisation set up when developing products has been mostly feature-led, so it might be ideas from stakeholders, from client requirements, might come from either NPS scores. It's come from rather than an actual deep understanding of how the user thinks and what changes we could do that makes the user experience better going forward. I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a gap here in terms of actually explaining what a user research plan is, because there are so much buzzwords in terms of what is user research. It can conjure up just somebody like a market research just taking up notes and understanding a bit more about what a user research plan is. But I just want to go through, I suppose, deep dive and understanding what actually, specifically, what a user research plan is. So defined by DScout, a user research plan is a concise reference point for product timelines, goals, key players and objectives. So this can be a bit of a, I suppose, more generic term. It's kind of just understanding a bit more about concisely what we're going to research and how the research is going to affect the project going forward. So there are actually 7 key elements when doing user research. So one is understanding the background and context of the actual research we're trying to conduct within the study. Why is the research important? Is it because there's a drop in revenue? Is it because there's a drop in or an increase in engagement, or looking at competitors? It's all about getting a contextual analysis in terms of why we're doing the research, instead of just saying we're going to do some research on users. Then it's doing objectives and goals, so predominantly using techniques like the SMART methodology in terms of defining specifically what we're trying to research. How is this going to be measurable? Is it going to be through metrics? Is it going to be KPIs? Achievable, so is it going to be broken down into smaller chunks in terms of understanding how it can be achieved? It's going to be realistic. We've got enough resources to actually get this research done. And then also time-based in terms of understanding how much time do you have to do this research. Sometimes it can go on, and it's also understanding on the time-based, is it going to be just one time, or is it going to be longitudinal? Is it going to be a study over various periods of time to make sure that we're iterating on the right problem? What teams do you want from the research? What do teams want from the research? It's not one person understanding, I want to do research because of this. It's identifying what research is going to help the team going better, and what outcomes would they like in terms of, is it going up one more artifact and the user? Is it defining what to be features are required? Is it defining if there's any areas within the actual user flow that we need to change? A breakdown of participants looking to recruit and how we recruit them. So it might be internal users using the product, might be external clients. So you might be able to get that from marketing in terms of defining who our key customers are. It might be actually looking at stakeholders and defining what they want from the actual process itself. But as long as it's not you doing the research going forward. So how do we conduct the research? So it's times where we say user research, but it's defining what type of user research. Is it doing surveys? Is it doing focus groups? Is it doing usability tests? Or is it doing one-to-one interviews with a user? It's all about defining why it's about why that method, rather than just like, oh, we want to do user research for the sake of it. An interview guide. So this is more specific towards doing user interviews and usability tests, because it's looking at understanding how you can introduce the actual process itself, looking at making sure that when you're interviewing people, they're at ease with what you're saying and what the process is going forward, defining key questions and tasks you'd like to do. And this can be refined several times, and it needs quite a lot of involvement from others just to define it going forward. An approximate timeline of when you want this research to be achieved by. So it's all about making sure we have enough time within, I suppose, the development cycle in terms of defining the before. How long is it going to take to go through iterations of the actual research plan and questions you're going to ask? Defining a bit more about how long the research is going to take. So it might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, it might just take a couple of days. And then also defining how long it's going to take to break down that research into key actionable insights. And of course, resources, how much people power we've got. Is there any software we need to use? And it's just defining how the resources are going to help implement the research going forward. So I've gone through about my experience with working, I suppose, my introduction to UX and user research, and to find what user research is. Now I want to go through in terms of key issues I found with user research, particularly working in silos. So a little bit of background information with the silo side of things, it's for myself, although working across a functional team, so working with developers, working with DevOps, customer service, also product management as well, when doing user research, it's mostly just siloed. It's not working with others to collaborate on the actual plan itself. So here's the key issues I found so far when working in silos. So failure to communicate shared values with user research. Now, I'm still pretty new to UX, and when doing user research, it's quite interesting to see some of the insights that when producing, particularly user interviews and usability tests, some key insights in terms of how the user uses the product and looking at key goals and key pain points within the process and product areas. But the problem is it's failing to actually communicate to specific audience type what they want to find out. And there's times where I've produced all this information about user and what they're interested in and how it's going to add value going forward, and I keep getting hit by, well, this is great, Sam, but what's it got to do with me? And sometimes feeding back user research, it's just general information. It's not broken down in terms of key actual insights that others can use. So lack of buy-in, again, is explained within the beginning of the talk. I said about myself being the first person to be responsible for, I suppose, the user research process within my organisation. And sometimes it feels like a bull in a china shop where you just add in processes when people are used to a particular process. So, for example, being feature-led rather than design thinking-based led when designing products. And it can be hard to just think, oh, I'm going to go in and do all this user research, and this is how you should take my information and develop the product going forward. And it kind of creates this area of distrust, and also thinks, well, actually, I'm not going to, why should I get involved with you? You haven't consulted me. And it's focusing on creating big changes and trying to run before we can walk at times. Placement of user research in development cycles. So within my organisation, we've got 2 cycles going through. The most prominent one is the waterfall cycle, where we just get do a, I suppose, project and create as many features as possible, and keep adding until we think, oh yes, now we're done. And in terms of user research within this process, it's been some benefit because I could work 2 sprints before some of the engineers in terms of, and developers in terms of understanding what the key issues and features need changing. The problem is it's working too fast in terms of getting all these insights, but how are these going to be developed? And I might have wasted, say, 4 weeks getting all this information and then realising that it's not viable. We can't add this in, or it's not necessary, or we ain't got time to do it. And then also trying agile-based environment whereby we try to use the Kanban approach, whereby we take tickets from products that we've got, I suppose, change requirements from either stakeholders or technical debt we're trying to fix, or mentions from customers. And the problem is it's trying to fit timing within this, because sometimes the fix is quite obvious in terms of, oh, we need to fix this. And then it's that rush to try and get it done. And it's trying to find out how research is going to benefit it, and also how can we fit into the process going forward. And finally, 4th one is lack of understanding of technical requirements. So again, for myself, it's been hard to sort of get this through my, I suppose, this mindset going forward. There's that understanding that, yes, I've got to focus on business needs. Yes, I've got to focus on user needs when doing user research. But there's a lack of understanding of technical requirements. Can this actually be viable to be done? What kind of considerations do we have to fit in terms of, is there any coding requirements required? Have we got the language or people to actually use that language to actually implement those changes? Are there any components? Have we got them? Can they be used? Do we need to buy in? Do we have to pre-make our components? Is there enough? Is it going to affect the ecosystem going forward? And I sort of put this little, so we've got the desirability and the viability from the user and business needs, but then technical requirements is sometimes ignored. So why the need for collaboration? I think this is important before we actually even start on how to collaborate. So shared empathy between user and product needs. If we created a collaborative user research plan, there's more of an insight in terms of understanding how the user uses the product, have that user first mindset in terms of, if we build this, how can we improve this? Is this the right flow? Are we creating the right product? Would I, as a user, find this a viable feature to add into the product? Reduce time and cost for product build. This is because if you're building prototypes and doing research behind it, then at least we know we're building the right product and we're on the right lines for changes. Recently, I was involved with a project where we were building a new product within the ecosystem, and it took probably about 6 months longer for it to actually be developed. And it was more feature-led, and finding out how many times we had to iterate the product because we ignored technical viability and also understanding what the user needs actually increased our costs quite a bit and also wasted a lot of engineering time. So with user research, it kind of helps to reduce that time because we kind of know not exactly, but at least we have an idea of where we're building and what we can do going forward. And working on better solutions. So I suppose with that collaboration approach, we kind of can work together in terms of understanding, okay, this is how the user thinks. Then this is ideas in terms of what kind of actions they want to take, and also understand a bit more about how they react within the system. We can work together in terms of understanding what the user needs and what kind of technical ideas we need going forward. Like example, any additional components. Is there any changes we need to make within the arrangement of how the things are laid on page? Is there any coding required to change, for example, notifications? It kind of gives a bit of understanding that you work together in terms of specific items need to be done and working together to create better tasks going forward. So bringing on to the main story of the actual talk itself, so techniques for creating collaborative user research. So number one is understanding team needs. Define why research is important for them. Again, why I suppose from my past experiences, I've just gone in like a bull in the china shop where I haven't really understood or taken empathy for actually other members of the team. We're going, well, why would research be important to them? What can be added to their job role? How can it make it easier for them to develop and code products for the actual business itself? Understand how research can benefit their role. Now, for the first 2 points, I forgot to mention this, is the fact that an idea would be to gather everybody together and do a lunch and learn in terms of defining a bit more and scoping out user research within the organisation. Why is it important to the organisation? Why is it important to the team? Why is it important to the individual? And why is it important to the ecosystem of the business going forward? Set up team interviews and what type of research will benefit them. So this is more about, again, getting that personal approach when creating a plan in terms of defining why research is important to them. And sort of get an understanding of how would research benefit them. Is it getting better answers in terms of creating understanding answers towards why we're developing something? Is it to get an understanding of how the user research the product? So I've done a few research questions in terms of doing user interviews on team members, just find a bit more about them. So how does elements of my role work with theirs? So it's understanding a bit more about that, I suppose, the day-to-day job role, what kind of they're looking to achieve within the job role, and understanding where there's a collaboration, sense of collaboration within the job role. When gathering information, so this is not just, I suppose, data from user research, but then also from other sources, how they like information presented to them and sent to them in terms of before, during, and after the process. Also, what are the core objectives of their role? So if user research should help benefit the role going forward in terms of how can I make your job role easier in terms of trying to achieve your objectives. So it might be to do with decreasing engineering time on specific projects so we can work on more projects, or decreasing workload. It's just creating that sense of shared responsibility when developing our products going forward. Second point is integrate research within workflows. So the first 2 points, I should have mentioned at the beginning, it's more about the preparation and the groundwork of how to create, before you can actually create a collaboration approach for the user research. It's more about understanding team members, getting that mutual approach, and also having that mutual trust going forward. So review past backlog items and what requires further research. So you might have, again, achieved there might have been some technical debt, there might have been some outstanding customer comments, there might be some requirements gathered from stakeholders, and there might be some more insights in terms of what is needed and why it's needed. So you might have, for example, change a button for this. Well, why is that important? What kind of goals is it going to achieve for myself, but then for the organisation? It sort of helps to define a bit more in terms of looking at behaviours and understanding why we're building something rather than what we're building. Define timelines of when research can be done. So I brought up in previous slides about myself being involved with both agile and waterfall methodologies. And the mistake I've done in the past is actually not allocating time correctly within the actual process of both methodologies in terms of defining when it can be done. If you make sure that you slot in a specific timeline of when it can be done, then it won't be ignored and overseen. So make sure you've got enough timelines for defining when user research will be done, user research planning, when the research will be done, and but then also there might be a time where it's reflecting on and understanding where points of further research be required within the process as well. It's not just, sometimes user research is not just one element of the process, it might be going through several times within the cycle. Define what artifacts of research will be required. So you might, there needs to be a mutual understanding of what the research is aiming to achieve. So it might be allocating Jira tickets in terms of defining what specific product or problem needs changing and what solution we're going to look at. It might be creating a user persona so everybody can understand, get us a little bit of empathy in terms of understanding what this person's going through, what kind of I suppose problems that the user's facing. It might be just a little bit of a Slack message to say, okay, then this is what we found within our user research, and just giving an overall update of what we're doing in the process going forward. Involve engineers within the user research process. So it's more about working together on research questions. So it's about understanding what kind of key questions we're looking to answer. Is there any questions they've approached during their time developing the product, or any observations they've noticed when, I suppose, on support, or understanding or heard some, I suppose, customers saying, oh, this isn't working correctly. It's all about sort of getting observations and thinking, okay, we can answer, we need to answer this question to find out a bit more about X, Y, and Z. Ask for key areas and observations around current experience. Is there actually anything internally when people developing products thinking, has this been considered? Is there anything we need to go do differently within when thinking about developing this product? Is there any blockers at the moment when we're looking to develop this product? Why is this not working? Or is there anything we need to change going forward? And collaborate together to help facilitate sessions. So it's more applicable to user research, user interviews, usability tests, and doing focus groups. But it's more, again, building that trust and having that shared ownership of doing user research, where everybody can get involved and understand, okay, I can get some empathy in terms of understanding what the user's going through, and I feel like I'm involved within the process itself. It's not just one person getting involved with user research, it's everybody having that sense of involvement where they feel like, actually, thank you for letting me get involved. Now I can understand what the user's going through. So it helps to understand and get that mindset of, okay, this is what the user goes through every day, and I can use that within my work. And finally, create synergies between user and business requirements and technical requirements. So predetermine if there are any technical limitations. As I explained again earlier in the presentation, whereby I personally thought about the technical requirements. By involving everyone within the process when building this collaborative user research approach, you can predetermine if there are any actual technical requirements that are required in the process. Is there anything when we're we're doing our discovery phase in terms of understanding, is there anything on a technical basis that we need to include? Is there anything where you think actually this might cause some issues if we do user research? Is there anything we need to discover in terms of, is there any limitations to what we can deliver going forward? Review of research on other areas of the system. So I think it's the change of product rule name in terms of, so when we do user research and we're looking to change one feature, we've got to realise that on myself, it's kind of realising that if we change a product, we need to make sure that everything else still works perfectly fine. And there has been times where I've worked on a project and one of the things being built worked perfectly fine, and then realising there's a few things that haven't worked as well and for some reason have broken. So it's all about understanding when you're doing user research, and also afterwards in terms of understanding what needs changing, understanding the effect on the ecosystem going forward. And define resources required. So it's also finding out a bit more how much time has everybody got available to help out with the user research, how much time we've got for the developing process, what time limitations do we have from either stakeholders' expectations or actually product delivery. Have we got enough resources for actually doing the user research? Do we need any other technical equipment? So we might have software or systems that we need to use for the user research going forward. So there's my talk today. So I'll give you summary of the talk and the presentation today. So I've given you some personal experiences of myself transitioning from UX and being a first time working with engineers and being responsible for the UX plan within my organisation. I've also given you some insights in terms of what user research is and 7 key points of understanding what what makes up a marketing plan, a user research plan, and then also highlighting benefits of personal experiences of issues using user research in silos, highlighting benefits of research, understanding team needs and making sure it's more of a collaborative approach going forward, integrating research within workload and understanding a bit more about the effects it has on the team and how research can help benefit the wider team. Involve engineers within the research process, so it might be facilitation, it might be to do with involving them questions, create synergies between user and business requirements and technical requirements to make sure that when research is being done, every scope is being looked at and understanding if this research outcome becomes this, then we can build it, or if we've got enough resources to actually build the changes required going forward. So here's additional information about myself. So I've left my LinkedIn profile, Medium account where I do a few bits of writing on UX and personal development, and my website. So thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Excellent, Sam. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I always find it fascinating when people come to speak to us, and I love hearing from your experience and how to be able to just progress, move things forward, whatever's needed. I'm always fascinated. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to open the floor up for you.
I've got a question. In your experience, what have been some common challenges or roadblocks when it comes to getting engineers involved with research?
I think it's probably one thing I've noticed is timing, because I know with our particular organisation, we're quite short-staffed with engineers, so it's kind of getting their time and trying to get them to get involved, but trying to explain why it's important. I think also it's explaining the reasons why research is important. I think there's that mindset where it's kind of, again, it's that rush mindset where we need to get a product out there quickly, rather than actually thinking, well, why is research important in the first place? And I think that's probably the main concerns. I think it might be also for us is a costing perspective. It's more costing perspective in terms of actually getting user research done, because it's just not, it's timing on my part in terms of resources, but then it's also timing to get to actually implement the research going forward.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sam, are you all right just to share your profile details again? I think a couple of people were trying to grab them, and then we started the Q&A bit.
Right, no
just pop
worries.
those back up for anybody who wants them. Thanks.
Yeah.
Brill.
There we are. Is that okay?
It hasn't come up for me.
Ah,
There it is. Yeah, lovely. So we'll leave that there for a moment. Does anybody else have any questions for Sam that you want to know about from what she said? No. I love it. I've got a question, Sam. It might not be entirely related. We've got a thank you for putting that up. So with people who needed it, I think I've got it. That's great. What made you decide you wanted to change Tack? What was the starting point of that?
I think it was because there was times where, when I first started my job role, where I just did user research because it was just get an introduction to the company and find a bit more about what the user research pain points were. And I actually spoke to the head engineer going, yes, I've done all this user research. And it was kind of his approach going, well, that's great, but why do I need that? Why is it important to me? And I understand his mindset's he's very busy because he's like CTO of the company, but then also busy with other things. And it kind of made me think, going, I need to involve people more within this process. Sometimes when I've been self-taught with the UX journey, it's sometimes harder to involve people in the process because you're not taught how to. And it's only until you enter an organisation you think, actually, I need to collaborate with people. I need to make sure they're involved in the process. I need to define why. And there was one point where I put in the slide, it was only actually yesterday, about the technical requirements. And I was speaking to a lead engineer, again, I was working with on a project, and realising when building products or looking at doing feature changes within the organisation, technical feasibility is often ignored within user research, because you think, oh, it's all about the user, it's all about the business, it's all about improving their aspects, but it's also making sure the job is easier for them and understanding how can we get involved with this process, what kind of technical knowledge or what kind of changes are required. And it's about making the job easier, but at the same time making sure that everybody feels involved. And I think sometimes that is ignored within the user research process.
Cool, thank you. We have had a question come up in the chat. Would you try to help engineers on their side of the project if they've helped with the research plan? It's kind of a two-part, really, I guess, but
definitely, yeah. If I try, I would love to try and help. Unfortunately, I'm not very good with coding at the moment, but I know I do a bit of design work as well, so kind of that helps them out in terms of understanding how it can be implemented. But then also with some design work I've done recently, or software, there is a chance where you can convert what you've done in design and convert it to code to make it easier for them going forward. So it's kind of, I think we'd have to ask what they need help with, because I could go in again like a bull and chime shop going, oh yes, I can help, but what specifically is required and how I can help benefit them will probably be the best approach to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And another question, a follow-up one as well. Would that also mean that you help create a technical architecture plan as part of the early as the research phase?
We try to, yes. I suppose, yeah. I kind of would need help with that because, again, still new to this sort of process, but I'll try and help with that sort of process. I suppose on my aspects, beforehand, I have tried to create user flows in terms of understanding how users go through the process going forward and defining what kind of key actions they go through the process. Then also might be defining a bit more about what kind of context they need, what kind of content. But yeah, I think the technical architecture for me is still pretty new. So I think it's, again, that's still learning that process.
Yeah, I think that's key with any kind of new industry or new role, isn't it? Is learning what you need to start from, and then you can build on that, can't you? Like you say, you can't just go in and go, I'm here, ta-da! Like, actually there needs to be that bit of, well, tell me what you do, tell me how I can help, you know, teach me something so that I can be of use to you. All of that side of things, isn't there? Definitely. Does anybody else have any other questions for Sam? I'll take that as a no. That's okay. In which case, it only stands for me to say thank you so much, guys, on behalf of RecWorks, for joining us this afternoon for Sam's talk. Thank you so much to Sam for bringing us that and having the time to have some Q&A at the end as well. It's always really good, really useful, I find. So we will hopefully see you all at our next event. We do have lightning talks planned for next Friday the 25th at 12:30, so put that in your diaries, and you will see our little ads for it as well. But for today, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and have a great rest of the afternoon and weekend. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Abby.
No worries. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.